Troy Denning had written some Star Wars material for West End Games in the late 80s and early 90s. 2 choose-your-own-adventure stories, and the Star Wars role-playing game supplement Galaxy Guide 4: Alien Races. But like his fellow author R.A. Salvatore, he was perhaps better known for his novels set within various Dungeons & Dragons campaign settings. Star by Star made it to number 11 on the New York Times bestseller list for the week of November 16th, 2001. In rereading Star by Star, I wasn't sure what was going to be worse. Either reading the novel completely unaware of all the pain and suffering that will follow, like what happened when I read it after its release in 2001, or reading it with a vague foreshadowing of every tragic event that would follow, like what happened when I read it 20 years later. I remembered most of the Jedi Strike Team subplot, but surprisingly little of everything else that was going on in the novel. So, a brief summary. The Yuuzhan Vong have unleashed the Voxyn, a savage creature capable of finding and killing Jedi Knights. And the Jedi are faced with a terrible ultimatum. If they don't reveal the location of their secret base to the Yuuzhan Vong, millions of refugees will be destroyed. So Anakin Solo hatches a daring plan. A group of Jedi will allow themselves to be captured by the Yuuzhan Vong and taken to Merkur, where they will hopefully destroy the Voxyn Queen. But in fighting a ruthless foe, they also run the risk of falling to the dark side. In Star by Star, it's easy to forget about the other subplots that are happening. I feel like this isn't helped by the fact that the audiobook almost completely focuses on the Jedi Strike Team subplot. But we also have some other things going on. We have Han and Leia helping Luke and the other Jedi. We have Danni Quee and Saba Sebatine's wild knights trying to capture and understand the Yamsk. We have the War Master Tsavong Law, Executor Anor, and his advisor Vergere and all their goings-ons. And then we also have Borsk Fey'lya, the failing New Republic, and the Kuwati Senator Viqi Shesh's schemes. Leia is coming to the realization that she doesn't want to be involved in politics anymore, and that, in fact, the Force is calling her to another path. But she keeps getting drawn back into it despite herself, so there's this push and pull between Borsk Fey'lya finally picking a side, deciding that he wants to fall on the side of the Jedi, and Leia not wanting to support his efforts. After being reunited with his family, Han's feeling a little nervous about losing them, so he's unwilling initially to take risks until Leia pushes back against that. A lot of their plotline ends up being them scouting out things for the Jedi and the New Republic military, and then an extended, sometimes silly subplot in which Luke and Mara give them their infant son, Ben Skywalker, for safekeeping. And in the process of trying to get off Coruscant, they just, lose him? I wasn't crazy about this part. I felt like it was an unnecessary elaboration to all the traumatic events going on with the fall of Coruscant already. Luke Skywalker finally takes a stand. He finally decides that the Jedi should take action. And so a lot of his plotline is Luke and Mara forming their own X-Wing squadron, taking action, being really, really successful at first, but as with the fall of Coruscant, losing a lot of people in the end. All the different squadrons have code names. Luke's is Farm Boy, but Mara's is Mother, which I understand she just had a baby, but come on. You can give her a better one than that. Danni Quee finally comes back to prominence again after not really being seen since the Dark Tide duology. I would be interested to know what Michael Jan Friedman's trilogy about her and a new Jedi Knight would have involved, because we learn here that she's been training in her Force skills for the past 2 years, But that does feel a little surprising because last we saw of her, she was definitely at the beginning of her Jedi journey. She goes along with Sabatine and the Wild Knights to try to capture a Yamsk, which is the Yuuzhan Vong brain strategy thing, and then try to learn how to counteract it or block it. She and Silgal off-screen create something to block it, and I wish we could have seen a little bit more of their work there. We also have more Jedi, both on the secret base and abroad. Kype Durin comes back into the fold again. We have, like I said, Saba and her squadron. And then we have Lando and his wife Tendra, who have created these Yuuzhan Vong hunter droids, and in typical Lando fashion, are busy trying to sell them to the New Republic military. I like the idea of the YVH droids, but they seem a little too overpowered for me. The Yuuzhan Vong warriors, especially the more elite ones, have been presented as being a great challenge, even to Jedi. But these droids have amazing armor, they're capable of sort of healing themselves, they have a lot of weapons on hand, and they ultimately seem far too OP to me. I find it telling that the Jedi Strike Team has 2 of these droids but quickly lose them, because I think they give our heroes just a little bit too much of a level up against the Yuuzhan Vong. On the political side, we have Borsk Fey'lya finally siding with the Jedi. Borsk has been really all over the place for these novels thus far, and he's been dithering and trying to play both sides for so long that it's just satisfying to see him actually do something, even if it is a suicide bomb. And Viqi Shesh just really falls apart in this book. She went from being this secret traitor working for the Yuuzhan Vong to just perhaps unduly letting them manipulate her, attempting to assassinate Borsk Fey'lya and then making multiple plays to capture Luke and Mara's child just seems like a step too far, and I'm not sure she would be willing to take that much action, especially when she thinks that the fall of Coruscant would lead to her being in a position of power, but she really goes downhill really fast. Tsavong Law begins his big push against the core, capturing Risi and Borealis before heading on to Coruscant. The Yuuzhan Vong capture Coruscant, they take it, but like most their strategy, the only reason they're able to take it is because they don't care how many ships they throw away to achieve something, which is very unlike our hero strategy, which is obviously they don't want to throw people's lives away. They want to be able to save a world or take back a world and not lose copious lives in the process. And Anor and Vergere are both scheming different things. They're both sent to capture the Jedi Strike Team, and specifically Jaina and Jacen Solo, because twins have great prominence in Yuuzhan Vong mythology. Nominor's plan is clear, but Vergere's plan is much less so. So there are other things happening in the book to justify its very long length, but the Jedi Strike Team subplot is obviously the most pivotal and the most central. Ganner Rhysode is the decoy leader, but Anakin Solo is the actual strategic lead. Obviously, the team is composed of volunteers, people had to choose to go, but I did question a little bit the presence of every single Solo child on this strike team. And so while I understand that the Voxyn are a huge threat, and obviously Jaina and Jacen and Anakin would all want to volunteer for this task, I wish there had been perhaps a little more pushback against all of them being involved, because you run the very great risk of Han and Leia losing all their children in one go. They come up with this extensive plan with the help of everyone on the Jedi base Eclipse, as well as Lando and others. Lando, pretending to be a traitorous member of the Great River Movement, gives them over to the Yuuzhan Vong. They are put on board the Exquisite Death and tortured to find out the location of the secret Jedi base. Once they realize that they are within Yuuzhan Vong territory, because thankfully one of their Jedi members has the ability to know where she is in the galaxy at any point in time, they take over the ship and go instead to Merkur to kill the Voxyn Queen. The Jedi healer Seagal learned that the Voxyn are all clones. The Yuuzhan Vong have only been able to create one viable specimen, and they keep cloning her for these new Voxyn. They arrive at Merkur and lose the first member of their strike team. Anakin senses the presence of other Jedi. They rescue them only to learn they are not Jedi, but dark Jedi. They bring them with them. They keep trying to reach where the cloning facilities are, but it's like a maze. They keep moving through these different simulated environments. They run into a trap, they try a different route, they run into a trap, they try a different route, and along the way, they lose more members of the strike team. They find an intact ship. Lobaka is able to bring it up and running, and Lomi and Welk betray them, take off with Raynar Thul on board, and that's the last we see of them. They're gone. And after the Edge of Victory duology, where Anakin has struggled with toning down his recklessness and thinking about the example he presents to other Jedi, he behaves in a very reckless manner, steps in to rescue his sister from a Yuuzhan Vong ambush, and is really grievously wounded in the end. He's unwilling to slow down, he's unwilling to stop and heal. So as the story progresses, we see Anakin becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. Anakin and the team finally make a play against the Voxyn Queen, only to become overcome by superior Yuuzhan Vong forces. He gives himself up to the Force to help the others escape. He's full of light. His cells are breaking down. He's able to destroy the Voxyn genetic material so that no more could be made, but at the cost of his own life. And with his death, the strike team falls apart into two factions. Jaina gives herself over to her anger and grief, definitely uses the dark side, is able to retrieve Anakin's body, but then crashes the shuttle they'd stolen, and in the end is able to escape with other of the Jedi, but at the cost of leaving her twin behind. Jacen, meanwhile, had been told by Anakin to lead the team to kill the Voxyn to get it done, and that's what he does. He tracks down the Voxyn Queen. Though he doesn't want to, he does directly lead to her death, but then he's captured by Vergere and his fate is very much left up in the air. Part of what I found really sad about Star by Star was how dysfunctional the relationship between the three Solo siblings were. Anakin doesn't want Jacen to be part of the team. He thinks that Jacen, with his different ideas, will tear them apart. But Jacen comes along, so he creates the Jedi mind meld that keeps them together for part of the book. But as these factions start to rise and tensions rise, it's harder to keep them connected. Jacen wrongly believes that Anakin orders Ulaha to wound herself rather than tell the Yuuzhan Vong the location of the Jedi base, and this creates a lot of tension between the two brothers. Anakin really regrets bringing Jacen on this mission, and Jacen is barely given an opportunity to apologize for it. I think what upsets me so much is that Anakin dies, and I never got the sense that the Solo kids were fully able to work through their conflicts before that happened, which I guess is true to life, but just so sad. And the Jedi Strike Team is sort of half composed of the Solo kids, Ganner Rysode, and then a lot of characters from the Young Jedi Knights books. But then we also have a number of new characters. And I think this sort of had the same problem that Stackpole's X-Wing books had for me, where characters die to let us know how dangerous this is and what a risk they're running. But other than the first death of Ulaha, Corey, and then Anakin's death, since I didn't know as much about these other Jedi characters, I just didn't feel much. So Star by Star does a lot and accomplishes a lot. And I think I have trouble talking about my issues with it because I don't think that they're issues with the book itself, but more things that I don't feel comfortable reading, which made me reluctant to reread Star by Star 20 years later. When the Jedi Strike Team is captured by the Yuuzhan Vong, obviously they want to uncover the location of the secret Jedi base, so there is a lot of torture there. I don't like reading torture. I didn't like it in Balance Point. I didn't like it in any of the other books. It's just really uncomfortable for me to read. So while I know why it's there, it really sets the stakes of everything that's to come. I didn't like revisiting it. And it just made me really upset how these young Jedi start to break and almost turn against each other. I also questioned the sense of time here. Balance Point and the Edge of Victory duology were supposed to take place 26 years after the Battle of Yavin, so within the span of 1 year. And then Star by Star takes us to the first book set 27 years after the Battle of Yavin. But the Yuuzhan Vong didn't discover the existence of Vornskurs until Edge of Victory Conquest. And I'm not quite sure how much time has elapsed between Conquest and Rebirth and now Star by Star, except to feel like the Voxyn cloning facilities and the world ship feel too entrenched for the amount of time that has elapsed. The Yuuzhan Vong have created these environments to train the Voxyn in, but we know that they had great difficulties in creating the Voxyn, evidenced by the fact that we have the Voxyn Queen and all the other Voxyns are her clones. So it just left me wondering, how were they able to create this all so fast and put all this together and have this world ship here? And it just seems a lot of work has gone into it, but the timeline doesn't necessarily reflect that. A related problem with the Voxyn is that we see one Jedi's death in the very beginning, Numarar, but the ones that come of Lusa and Elisa and Lyric, we don't see. We just hear about from Jedi who are crying and upset about the news. And I wish we could have maybe seen some more of those to drive home the threat of how bad the Voxyn is and why they need to tackle this impossible task. Because as it stands, I almost wanted to side with some of the other Jedis because Voxyn are obviously a huge threat if they need to send a task force to tackle them. They just didn't feel as built up as I maybe would have wanted them to be. And finally, I found that the action scenes were difficult to follow, which is a little hard when so much of the book is devoted to action scenes. I actually think this worked very well for the strike team scenes on the world ship because it's disorienting. It has a very dream-like vibe, which I think works well with the mission and works well with the amount of fatigue that they're operating under. It almost gives a sense of unreality to everything that's happening above Merkur because I'm not sure how long they've been there and exactly what their routes have entailed, so it just gets murky. But with the other characters, I feel like those disorienting battle scenes are much more of a detriment. It's hard for me to follow what's happening in the battles, and I should be able to follow what happens. And the battle for Coruscant is confusing, and there's lots of things happening. So the emotion is right, but I feel like there should be a little bit more clarity there. So, in short, Star by Star is a very emotional read. More so than any of the other books we've encountered in the New Jedi Order thus far, this is a war story, and it has the losses that go along with that. The tides of the Yuuzhan Vong invasion have irrevocably changed and tipped over to the Vong's favor. Coruscant is gone, the New Republic government is in pieces, the secret Jedi base on Eclipse has been breached, and most grievously, the Jedi have lost countless members, including Anakin Solo. And while I'm glad I got to read it for this reread, and there were some parts that I thought were really well done, on a whole, Star by Star is just too dark and grim and depressing for me. And I'm glad I've got it behind me so that I can now move forward to the rest of the series and hopefully the tides of the war changing for the better. So next time I will be reading a Jaina-centric novel, Dark Journey by Elaine Cunningham.